Beautiful star seeds. Welcome to another Monday at 5:55. I'm wearing my cozy bear jacket because I feel like a bear and I feel like I want to hibernate. And I don't know what is up with the energy, but I'm just so lacking everything. I'm lacking motivation, I'm lacking energy, I'm lacking passion. It is so not like me to feel this way. So I'm really just trying to surrender and do some work from bed and yeah, do what I can do, really. So if you're feeling like you're totally lacking motivation and energy, join the club. You are not alone. And there's got to be something about. I'm feeling like maybe full moon related, but I don't know. I'm not an astrologer. I'm not a numerologist. I don't know what's going on out there, but it's something's happening. Something is happening. Yeah. That being said, we are going to talk all about the really huge shift that is taking place at this time. And it's taking place for divine feminine energies and divine masculine energies. So even though the topic or the title of this video says divine feminine shift, it's a lot more than that. It is affecting both the males and the females. I actually want to just start by mentioning that I don't really believe in the same maybe gender norms as, maybe this 3D world believes in. I believe that we are all fluid in all of the ways because we have all lived both as male and females in past lifetimes. So, I really feel like gender is a spectrum. I myself am obviously a female, but I feel way more like a dude most of the time, and I'm working on that. So I myself really feel the challenges of that divine masculine energy shift. And then I'm with a partner who, although she has more of a divine masculine appearance, she is much more divine feminine on the inside. So it's a very interesting dynamic. So the energies are shifting at this time for these frequencies. No matter what gender you are, you're going to have more of a divine masculine or more of a divine feminine energy. So even though I'm going to reference male and female today, it is completely unrelated to the body that you're in. By this point in time, you should know if you are more of a divine masculine or feminine energy. All of us have both traits in us, and this is what we're going to get to by the end of this video. But I want to talk about what exactly is happening with this shift and how is that specifically affecting the divine feminine energies? How is that affecting the divine masculine energies? And where are we going to get to in this brand new frequency of the 5D? Cool. Before we get there, before we dive into that, couple of things, couple of announcements. If you missed the Galactic Federation meeting on October 11th, check it out now. It was absolutely incredible. We talked about crystalline upgrades. We talked about dark elite agendas. We even talked about nanoparticles and the V. So I highly recommend checking that out. And then, of course, as always, if you guys like this video, please share. This is a really good video to share. It is not that fringy. It is not that out there, but it really is going to relate to everyone. Everyone's going to feel, oh my goodness, this is what I'm dealing with. All right. Last but not least, so many of you were asking about the Grayson doll. We finally got our act together and we actually have the Gracie doll for sale. So if you want a little bit of alien vibes in your life, or maybe, for your starseed kids for Christmas, definitely check out the link, and hopefully Lauren or one of the mods have that link for the Grayson. So check it out. You guys can have your own Grayson, but of course you can name them whatever you want. Okay, so let's dive into it. I think really getting started with just, the Me Too movement was pushing these basically pushing a balance of the divine feminine, divine masculine. For so long, we all know that we have been living in a very masculine dominated society full of control and power dynamics. And of course, who controls all of that? You know, the shadow governments and whatnot. And recently, like in our lifetime, we have seen this huge shift. I mean, think about it. Like 100 years ago, well, I don't know if it was that, you know, if it was that soon ago, but not too long ago, women were not allowed to vote. We were not allowed to own property. We have come leaps and bounds within that time period. All right, which is amazing. But we still need the equality. And specifically, I'm talking about equality in the 3D, so equality with getting paid the same. I think Canada's pretty good with paying women the same, but America's way off still. Like, it's mind-blowing how off we still are on that kind of equality. So what's happening right now with both divine masculine and feminine energies, once again, no matter what body you're in, there is a huge purging of sexual trauma and release. There is a huge purging of sexual trauma. This is going deep within our souls. This is going deep into past lifetimes. These sexual traumas, these repressed, shameful narratives have been living inside of us for such a long time. It is way more common than I think we even realize, which is a huge problem. But right now, our lives, our realities are shifting so that we can open up and basically release what has not been serving us, which is a lot of that trauma. Now, what's really interesting is not only women are releasing this sexual trauma, but men are releasing sexual trauma as well. And if you think about kind of gender stereotypes and gender norms, the man is the provider and the protector, and the woman is the gatherer, right? I mean, she's the at-home kind of nurturing motherly. Right now, we are scraping away all gender norms as we know it, and eventually we're going to get to a place, and we're already starting to see that, where each of us have both divine masculine and divine feminine energies within us, so that we are complete. It is not about entering into a relationship to feel like you complete me. That is such an old linear 3D concept that no longer needs to exist in this new frequency. Moving forward, we are whole individuals, which means that we have both divine masculine and feminine energies in a clear and healthy way. And we are completed within ourselves. And then we meet another complete individual. That is a whole relationship. That is not a half relationship. That's not a 3D relationship. All right. 3D is polarizing. It is you are either one or the other. You either have one identifier, one role, one category, or the other. In 5D, it's I can be it all. I can do all the things. I can be all of the identities in my relationship. But if you come into a relationship as a whole individual and you are with, especially these days, we're getting a lot of people awakening, ascending, empowering, stepping into that other side of the dynamic, and their partner is still stuck in that one limited, linear dynamic. And that's okay for the time being. That is okay temporarily. That's okay for the next couple of years. Eventually, you are going to drift further and further apart if the other person is unwilling to complete themselves within that whole dynamic, if that makes sense. Okay? So the reason why we're releasing sexual trauma at this time is to essentially neutralize any and all disharmonic frequencies within our chakra system, within our aura, within our soul, within our bodies. So we're completing things from childhood, we're completing things from past lifetimes. A lot of us don't even realize how much we're completing all the time, which is probably a good indication of why we're so freaking exhausted and unmotivated. Typically, that's an indication that we're doing a lot of the internal work. Therefore, externally, we just don't have the energy to cook dinner or get dressed or whatever it is that the human requires. So, really keeping that in mind and being really, really kind to yourself during this experience of release and overwhelm and exhaustion and all of that. So I also wanted to mention too that the masculine energies are also releasing sexual trauma, and this identification of I need to be a man, therefore I need to be the protector and provider, therefore I need to be power hungry or control hungry or prideful or what have you. Okay, there is just as much of the twisting and manipulation of what the divine masculine should be as much as there is that twisting and manipulation of what the divine feminine should be. And with the divine masculine energy, the old energies of the divine masculine, it is so much weight to bear. It is such a burden in so many ways to be a divine masculine energy, because it feels like, oh, well, I have to step up and do all of the things. And of course, on the divine feminine side, it feels the same way, but in a more emotional level. So once again, we're just kind of melding these energies and realigning. Okay, I also want to talk just briefly about and I've talked about this before with a couple of my sexual trauma releasing videos, but I have to kind of re-mention this as well in this video. So, if I were to say there was going to be any major manipulation in this reality on this planet, pretty much every aspect of this reality and society and system is manipulated and screwed up and twisted around, and it's really quite wild when you start looking into it. One of the biggest things that I've really noticed over the past couple of years that has been so twisted is not only gender norms, but it's also just sexuality in general. I mean, we have porn that is teaching us completely twisted, really awful, disturbing ways to express sexuality. And that is unfortunately really creating a negative impact on the younger generations as well. Every kid has access to a tablet or a smartphone, and that honestly really worries me, because that's where their sexual education is coming from, is the internet. And so the reason why sex and sexuality has been so twisted in the past, in history, is because I truly believe, especially from my lifetime in the ancient Egyptian mystery schools, that sex is a gateway, specifically more so orgasm, is a gateway to higher realms. As a matter of fact, I believe that orgasm is a gateway to pure source connection, which is a lot of power. It is a lot of power. And the ancient Egyptians believed that orgasm was not only a connection to source in their own language, but it was also a connection to things like reverse aging and healing your body and healing your soul. And so when we experience sex or orgasm through a twisted, manipulated, guilty, shameful way, the connection to source is not pure. And a lot of the time, that orgasm energy actually tends to get absorbed by, unfortunately, dark forces and what have you. And so I don't want to be all like negative and say they literally feed off of our sexual energy, but it's kind of this double-edged sword of not only is that connection not pure and full of guilt and shame and full of weird dynamics of like, oh, or is this what's happening? Like, I mean, we're not taught to just really be ourselves with sex and expression and sexuality, which can be it separates us even further from source, right? Which is really difficult. This is why both men and women need to heal this sexual trauma. And like I said, I mean, you could be completely fine in this lifetime and in your childhood, but in past lifetimes, most likely you were caught up in some sort of twisted sexual manipulation, to be honest. I mean, the more and more that I look into it, the more I realize that starseeds especially have been targeted in past lifetimes so that we do not have access to that connection to source in future lifetimes. The individuals who rule this system and who have been in control of this entire reality, they completely understand all of the facets of this reality and all of the ways in which we can connect or disconnect. Pop quiz. What is the number one most disconnecting frequency they can inject and emit into the population? What is the number one most disconnecting frequency that they can project into us? It's fear. Of course, right? What are they doing right now? What is this entire reality consisting of right now? Fear, right? So when you're in and prompted into that fight or flight response frequency, of course you can't express yourself. Of course you can't, orgasm. Of course you can't actually connect to source in that way. Even if you were in this constant state of fight or flight or fear because of whatever is going on around you, and you sit down to meditate, do you really think you're going to be able to quiet your mind and, free yourself from distraction? It's not going to happen. Their biggest agenda is fear. And obviously, their other agenda has been manipulation. Luckily, things like Tantra are coming back. Things like male-female support systems are coming back. Sexual expression and freedom of the orgasm and freeing the nipple and all of these kind of campaigns and crazy things are all coming to light to help us better understand that, whatever's going on is totally okay. And you can release the trauma that you've had. So, what else did I want to mention? So the divine feminine energies right now are stepping into empowerment. In so many ways, we are speaking up and creating healthy boundaries. If you want to ask, how can I better empower myself? It's about two things: speaking up and setting healthy boundaries. That's really what it comes down to. For me personally, my throat chakra has been all over the place. Exhaustion's been all over the place because I'm doing this internal work. Okay. So I also want to mention too, with the divine masculine energies, basically the divine masculine energy is being prompted to release control, anger, and pride. Basically, the ego. Any male or divine masculine energy who is unwilling to change, unwilling to release that pride, that control, that ego, are going to be met with basically block after block, challenge after challenge. And that can be quite complicated for a lot of people. And it can be very complicated for a lot of relationships. There are many people, many of you who watch me, who you are the only person in your relationship who watches me. And I'm not like the defining factor of your awareness or awakening by any means, but to hear about couples watching me together, it literally speaks volumes to both of their vibrational levels. A lot of women I find, right, and you guys can comment, are you watching this with your partner? Are you the only one in your partnership who is watching, right? Because what I found in this community is a lot of women are watching and their husbands couldn't care less and they're watching the football game. And there's only so much energy you can put into basically trying to get your partner into that new vibrational frequency level, right? And I'm hoping more and more the divine masculine energies will come on and will be more present, which basically means that they're willing to let go of their ego, let go of their pride, let go of their control, and open their minds. That's what this channel is all about. It's just about opening your mind. So here are the symptoms of this great divine masculine feminine shift, which is essentially a divine masculine feminine balance. Once again, before we find divine masculine feminine balance within the collective of humanity, we have to find divine masculine feminine balance within ourselves. All right? So here are some of the symptoms that you are going to experience during this shift. Breakdown of relationships and identity and ego deaths. So like I said, if one of your partner is still kind of stuck in their old reality, they're going to have to make a change through most likely an ego death or an identity collapse. But it is very, very common during an awakening, during a big shift like this, that relationships actually do not survive in this new frequency because they get together in an old frequency. One of them ends up leveling up, stepping up, awakening, and the other one is left behind. The polarity of those two people gets to a certain extent that is just unbearable for both, which is a common symptom, and it's quite difficult to deal with. But for me, my last relationship was in an old frequency of, oh, well, you're the dude and I'm the female, and this is the way that it should be because this is what society tells us it should be. And so that was in a very old paradigm. In my relationship now, we met as complete individuals, both divine masculine and feminine, regardless of gender. And we have been able to change and shift and converse about the growth and the upgrades and whatnot, rather than having that separation and feeling that separation. Just because your partner isn't where you are doesn't exactly mean that you have to break up with them. There is a period in which you can kind of hold space for them. But it's also the question of, well, how long do I hold space for this person before they actually make the shift? All right. Okay, more symptoms here. Exhaustion is a huge symptom because you are being challenged on your very essence of being. So like I said, if you're a very divine feminine energy, which means that you tend to be indecisive, you tend to be very emotional, you tend to be very experiential. You want to experience something, also very creative. Also divine feminine energies are very they're easygoing in the way that they can change. They can change pace. They can adapt. That's the word. They can adapt. Divine masculine energies, like I said, very, very stubborn, typically very A-type, very direct in their communication, and very knowledge-based rather than experience-based, and very lack of emotions. The more, like I said, we all have both. The more extreme you are to one end of the spectrum or the other, the more symptoms you're going to experience during the equalizing or the neutralizing of both of those frequencies. Regardless of what end of the spectrum you're on, as long as you're willing to change, you're good. You're going to be just flowing along with the shifts, all right? But exhaustion is a huge symptom of that because there's this hopping back and forth of divine masculine, divine feminine, divine masculine, divine feminine. And then also tons of trauma work. Like right now, either you have done the trauma work, and I'm talking I don't want to say years and years, but I don't know, years ago, I thought that I was doing trauma work. Years before that, I thought I was doing trauma work. Right now, I'm doing trauma work, and I'm like, okay, cool, this is it. This is the end. This is the finish line of my trauma work. And that's what I thought years ago. And that's what I thought years before those years. So I just want to say trauma work is kind of an ongoing thing. And a lot of that trauma is so deeply repressed that we don't even realize what we are working on. But if you're getting called to doing trauma work, especially sexual trauma work, then you are right in alignment with where humanity is at. And you are very intuitive to what you need to work on, all right? One thing that I want to recommend, there are all of the spiritual practices in the world. There's crystals and essential oils and stretching and yoga and energy healing and, and tapping and all of the things, all the modalities, okay? But sometimes you just need to talk to a third-party person who can just listen. And yes, I'm talking about therapy. And I've never really talked about therapy because okay, I don't know how to say this, because I don't think that I've ever really respected it before, because I've never really found the right person to talk to. Then there's all of this stigma in especially the older generations of, oh, well, you're going to therapy, it means something is wrong. And it doesn't have to be that. So I just want to let you know that I'm actually in therapy right now. It's kind of funny because I therapize myself basically, which probably isn't good, but just having someone who doesn't know who you are, who is completely neutral and objective, who has the right frequency to deal with your energy is really important, is really key. So I do recommend therapy, obviously if it resonates with you, but I find talking about things, because I'm not exactly always accountable to writing in my journal all the time, is so healing. Talking about things is so healing. Just releasing that knowledge and information and your thoughts, so healing, okay? So I also want to say too, big emotional release is happening. So that could be anger release. That, I mean, actually, to be honest, anger has been coming up a lot, and I want to do a whole video just on anger, or a whole podcast episode just on anger. I think it's really important to talk about, and I think it's totally okay to feel pissed off sometimes. I think it's totally normal. And then I also want to mention too, family power dynamics are shifting. Please be aware that family power dynamics are shifting because of this male-female dynamic shift. All right, so typically when the family power dynamics shift and the ones who are in control of those power dynamics start to be out of control, usually there's a lot of blow-ups and a lot of conversing and a lot of healthy boundaries that are needed in those moments. So just be aware that that's a very typical trait of the shift that's occurring as well. Okay, one final symptom that I have here is basically the urge to complete wrongs. This is very fascinating. So you might be having weird dreams. You might be having weird flashbacks to, say, childhood. You might be having weird recalls or what have you. But there's this urge within a lot of people, myself included, to be like, whoa, like, why did I take that kid's fruit roll-up when I was 4 years old? Like, that was so mean of me. Like, I wish that I knew who that person was so that I could go back there and complete that wrong. I think this is a part of a karmic clearing as well that's taking place, but just know that if you feel like you're backtracking a lot, if you feel like you need to have conversations with really like old people from the past a lot, then you are also totally in line and totally on track for healing those cycles. And I also want to let you know that if you are one of these people who feel the urge to go back and to complete that, then I want to validate for you that you don't necessarily have to call the person up or send them a Facebook message, like a stalker message. You actually don't have to connect with them at all in order to complete those energies. You can have the conversations, you can say what you need to say internally to that person, you can backtrack, you can quantum loop into those timelines and complete that energy from the safety of your own bed and chill in on your own to do that. So just know that I've also contemplated, whoa, didn't realize that I felt so guilty about that thing. You know, I should really reach out to my childhood friend. And the messages that I've received is, sometimes, not always, but sometimes you actually create more karma, opening up that door again, rather than being able to complete it on your end at least, on your own. All right, so just know that that's possible too. Okay, last messages that I want to mention. And like I said, if you resonate with this video and this channel, subscribe, like, and share this video in particular, because people need to know that there is a shift that's taking place, and it's not just affecting society, it's not affecting, you know, just your free will or your finances or your happiness or your freedoms. it's also really affecting these dynamics of divine masculine, feminine, and ultimately, at the end of the day, we are all getting to a place where we can have it all. We can say yes and yes. It doesn't have to be one or the other. This new 5D reality is never about one or the other. It's about both simultaneously. And this just popped into my mind, but I want to make mention of it. Someone asked me, I think in a recent Q&A for the members, how are we going to get rid of all of the darkness on the planet if we are still existing in a binary universe? I love this question. And I have been contemplating this question for many, many years. And it honestly wasn't until, was it 2019 where I think it was 2019, I finally got the answer to this question. It was answered by the Galactic Federation, and for whatever reason, they held it back from me for quite some time. And so here it is. Here's the answer. How do we shift into a higher vibrational frequency while getting rid of the darkness and maintain balance between both in this reality? The answer is that ultimately we get to a place within our own system, within our own frequency, where we all possess the ability to become both light and dark, and yet from a neutral, objectively observing place, we all have the free will of that choice. We do not have to choose to be just light or just dark. The way that we're moving into this new frequency, into this higher vibration, is that we all have both within us. And I want to remind you, because I know that so many of you, myself and my wife included, are getting psychically attacked. I have to add this into the end. I am so grateful for the many number of years where I have been psychically attacked in, you could imagine all of the ways, physical, vibrational, emotional, spiritual, all of the ways attacked. I am so grateful for having that experience because it has allowed me to have firsthand knowledge and experience of the dark side so that I can then understand both light and dark. So then I am free and liberated and sovereign to choose which frequency I want to be in from moment to moment. Not only that, but I can very easily discern between light and dark frequency when I am in other realms and when I'm in this realm. All right? So for those of you who are getting psychically attacked and it's been pretty brutal and extremely exhausting, hang in there. You contracted these experiences for a reason, because in order to master this reality, you need to experience both light and dark. You need to become both divine masculine and divine feminine. Yeah. All right. Well, that is all from Grayson and myself. Have yourselves a wonderful rest of your Monday. Keep up the good work. And just a reminder, if you're tired, sleep. If you're hungry, eat. If you want to do nothing, do nothing. Just seriously honor yourself and listen to yourself in every moment, from moment to moment. Bye for now. I will see all of you in the 5th dimension frequency.